Hello HEMA friends and welcome to another episode of HEMA Q&A with Fede. Today I answer the question of Thiago K, which asks me, as far as sparring at different speeds or intensities goes, in your opinion, how do you think historical fencing students trained and sparred each other? Now, this is one of the, let's say, topics which I am researching the most in the last years, because training is a very important thing in relation to which fencing you create. You are able to represent and how much skill you are basically learning and how well you are learning it and how fast you are learning it. So I am interested of course in the training method of the past, and it is not that easy to understand how people in certain periods, especially, of course I am talking about the medieval period, trained and of course sparred each other. The more we go forward in time, the easier it is to understand things and learn training methods, understand which kind of tools people use, etc, etc. Instead, when we are talking mainly about medieval period, it is not that easy to understand how people trained. So that's the main motivation. I am so interested in this kind of thing. But I want to jump directly in the topic you asked for, which is sparring. Now, sparring is not something, is something that we take for obvious, but I am not sure that in the past was that obvious. Now, every one of us have the idea of like people training with wooden sword in the castle, so the father training the son, or the weapon master training the student in the castle, sparring each other, etc, etc, as we see sometimes in films or whatever. Now, most probably, I'm not sure. I can't say, that's my opinion, so that's really important. This is mainly my opinion. It is based on some images that we have. We have some images of people training with wooden tools, mainly, in fact, I would say only sticks, so not really wooden swords. There was probably not even the need of taking care too much about this thing of creating a tool which represented the sword too well. People was training a lot with sticks in the past, as far as we know. So sticks were most probably a really important tool, and sparring with sticks and without protections, you can really easily figure out that is kind of dangerous, especially for your face, etc. So you can spar, but you have to limit your force. You can strike really hard because you risk to incapacitate in some way your students, so he can't train anymore, so he can't grow. And of course, like, medicine was different. There wasn't really a very good way of fixing like bones always in the proper way. They had the tools to do it, but like the result was not like 100% perfect all the time. Quite often the opposite. So like training and sparring was probably kind of different. Probably some people sparred, and I think that this was in relation to the different masters that we would probably end up finding out around. So everyone most probably had different ideas, different training methods, etc. We know that there were traditions, so the Lichtenauer tradition maybe had some kind of training method, probably at some time, and also in relation of the time we would probably had different access to different tools, or maybe even some like protective equipment. I'm not sure if people sparred using some like pieces of armor to like train swordsmanship in a certain way. Maybe yes, but we don't know a lot about this. So I want to talk in relation to this about not European swordsmanship, but I want to give you an example in relation to Japanese swordsmanship. So in the late 16th century and the beginning of the 18th century, the Yagyu-ryu school in Japan was the school which trained the shogun. So it was the most important school at that time. And in the Yagyu Munenori book, at least the edition which I have, there was really interesting information which I found out, which is about a specific tool that the Yagyu used to train, which was called the Fukuro Shinai. Fukuro Shinai was a kind of Shinai which was better because it was safer, and it allowed some kind of sparring during the training. Instead, people used mainly wooden swords at that time, so bokken swords. And sparring with bokkens was most probably really hard or most probably really unrealistic. And of course it needed a lot of safety rules, most probably, and people were, I think, not really eager to eat each other with wooden swords so often. So this Fukuro Shinai brought most probably some kind of more realistic kind of sparring into the training. And that's also why probably that kind of school was so important, because it was, as far as I know right now, it was the only school which used that kind of Shinai, and so that kind of training method, because the training method is based on the tools you're using. So this example brings to us a really important thing to think about. So sparring is not something that we can easily take for given. So it's not an obvious thing in relation to training swordsmanship. It is obvious for us in the 21st century, most of the times, not every single time, but probably in the past was not always obvious. So some people may be sparred in some kind of controlled way, maybe. Some people sparred in a more strong way, but maybe using armor. We can just speculate about this because we don't have any kind of information about this. And maybe people do not spar it at all. They maybe use it to practice drills. And the thing that we find out even in the old Koryo school of the old Japanese tradition. That's my opinion. The example I brought you about the Yagyu school is really important because it gives us a really important information to think about. So sparring is crucial, and it is really important because it makes people able to relate to the chaos of the ever-changing chaos of fighting in a far better way. And so that's why the Yagyu was so important and becomes so important and so famous at its time. So how it was in the medieval period, we don't know. It's hard to understand. When we are going forward, of course I'm talking about Europe now, when we are going forward in time, we see some kind of tools used to create safer environment for practice and sparring, like some kind of let's say soft big tips on top of rapiers to allow the thrust, but of course it was safe, but safe-ish, because problems happened. In fact, I remember that I can't remember if it was a 17th century document which talked about the fact that generally speaking you can easily understand the sword fighting, the fencing instructor, the fencing master in the city, because it's the guy which is missing one eye and some teeth on front. So that's an example. So yeah, we don't really know. I just wanted to give you a bunch of informations to think about. It's a really interesting topic. I am trying to gather information about it. It's not an easy question to answer. So my answer for you is, yeah, most probably someone sparred, someone not. We don't know how much, at how intensity. It's a really weird topic to talk about. I have my ideas, I shared it with you. It was most probably heterogeneous it exists, this word. I don't understand. So it was really different. People most probably behaved in different ways in terms of regions, traditions, single masters, different ideas, different training tools. We don't know. So that's it. That's my opinion about this. That's my answer for your question. It is not that clear as other ones, but that's it. We don't have a lot of information. Thanks for watching, people, and as always, see you next time.